Right, I think 11 o'clock has come, so yeah, I'll kick off. Guys, welcome to the Coral Expeditions presentation on the absolutely beautiful Kimberley today. My name is Will. I'm a member of the sales team. I'm based in Brisbane, but our head office is up in Cairns and has been for the last 40 years or so. And today, the aim is just to give you a bit of an overview of the Kimberley. It's been at the core of what Coral Expeditions does for the last 31 years now, basically. We pioneered expedition cruising in the Kimberley, 31 years or so ago. And each and every year, our entire fleet, which I'll come on to shortly, are present in the Kimberley from kind of early April to late September, early October. All three ships in the Coral Fleet, and we offer between 40 and 45 departures each and every year. So hopefully, no one has the levels of expertise and experience that we offer in what we consider our backyard. So, but just to kick things off, I've got a really short video clip. We hosted Channel 10 on board one of our ships last season in the Kimberley. I'm not going to play you the full documentary, but you can track it down on our website. But it just gives you a little overview very quickly before we carry on with the presentation. So enjoy.
I've never seen anything like it, and it's here in Australia.
The scenery, the art, it's just been an amazing experience.
There's nothing like seeing it in person.
You just get this sense of time and space and colour. It's a very special, almost spiritual experience.
You'll enjoy every single moment of it.
So that just gives you a little bit of a taster of hopefully the next kind of 30 to 35 minutes. We'll have a bit of a Q&A session at the end. So if you have any questions, please just pop them into the chat function on your computer, and I'll do my best to address those at the end of the presentation. So as I mentioned, Coral Expeditions have been in business now for 40 years. We're Australian owned. We sail under the Australian flag, and we have a pretty much exclusively Australian crew, admittedly with a sprinkling of Kiwis amongst them. And it means we offer a very kind of unique style of kind of true small ship expedition experience. The Kimberley is at our core, but obviously when the rains start to fall in early October, our fleet disperses all around Australia, but also into the waters of the Asia Pacific region. The onboard experience is, really based on that really, Australian crew. So we have no assigned seating. There's no dressing for dinner. And we have a very kind of informal, laid back, but still very, very premium kind of onboard experience. And that's the same whether or not we cruise in the Kimberley or all our other domestic and international destinations. As mentioned, relaxed, informal atmosphere. It's an all-inclusive onboard experience. So all your food and drink, your alcoholic drinks during lunch and dinner services, and obviously all your excursions as well. We actively encourage kind of an open interaction between our guests and crew. So you'll see on the top right-hand side there, open bridge policy. You can take your morning coffees up there and have a chat with the captain and his crew on board there at any time of the day and night, basically. And then you'll see there's loads of kind of public in and outdoor areas where you can kind of just sit back and relax and watch the absolutely stunning Kimberley vistas drift by. Usually, I must say, with a cheeky G&T or glass of wine in hand. Our fleet are absolutely purpose-built to sail in Kimberley waters, and then the predominantly tropical and subtropical waters, which is the Coral Expeditions sweet spot. We've got 3 ships in the fleet, but I'll come on to those right now. So Coral Discoverer, she's our smallest vessel, carrying a maximum of 72 passengers at any one time across 36 staterooms. I'm not going to go into too much detail on specific ship, layouts, that type of thing. Please feel free to jump onto our genuinely excellent website where we give you all that additional information. All you really need to know is that across all 3 of our ships in the Coral Fleet, All our cabins are outward facing, so our leading cabin categories at the bare minimum have a porthole or a couple of porthole windows before we move up to our promenade decks with big picture windows. But lots of our ships as well have private balconies, so there's a kind of cabin category option that's going to be hopefully suitable for all. So Coral Discoverer, smallest vessel, 72 passengers across 36 staterooms, all outward facing, all en suite, and many, like I say, that come with private balconies. Coral Discoverer predominantly stays in domestic waters. So if you've cruised with us in the Kimberley before, or down in our second biggest domestic market down in Tassie, you've probably been aboard CD already. But we've also got two slightly larger and newer ships in the Coral fleet. So Coral Adventurer and Coral Geographer on the screen, launched in 2019 and 2021 respectively. They're a little bit bigger, so can fit a maximum of 120 guests, again across 60 staterooms, all outward facing, all onward suite, and as you can see from the image there, many come with private balconies as well. Jump onto our website if you'd like a little bit more detailed information, guys, and you can peruse to your heart's content. If you take away anything from this presentation today at all, and this is applicable for both, the Kimberley we're discussing today, but all of our expedition itineraries, it's the following couple of slides. These are our unique explorer tenders. We call them our kind of safari dukes of the sea, and they've been designed and built by Coral to provide the perfect conduit between our kind of mothership vessels and the really varied remote wilderness areas that we traditionally focus on. You can see on the screen there some of the kind of key selling points of them, but the big ones are comfy seating. We do 2 shore excursions daily. They can be 2 or 3 hours long at each time. So just to be able to sit back and view these stunning locations in a bit of comfort is a big one. The sunroof on the top, absolutely crucial in places like the Kimberley. I've actually just returned from a Kimberley cruise a couple of weeks or so ago. It's baking hot at the moment, high 30s, early 40 degrees. You don't want to be sitting in that baking sun for 2-3 hours at a stretch. And it also has got a toilet on board. That might not sound like a big deal, but it stops us having to kind of constantly interrupt the excursion experience to run regular toilet trips back to the ship. Most of the places we visit, or all of the places we visit in the Kimberley, have absolutely zero facilities. There's no sign of human inhabitation outside of the ancient indigenous history, which I'll come on to shortly. But in short, they provide the perfect conduit between our motherships and the really kind of remote areas. As you can see from the top left hand side of the screen, they've got a drop down ramp at the front, so they're perfect for the predominant beach landings, particularly in the Kimberley, both wet and dry. But with a wet landing, we're never going to drop you in water that's more than 10-15 centimeters deep. So most people just take their shoes off or come pre-prepared with those kind of dual purpose wet shoes, basically. The top right hand side and bottom right hand side of the screen is the boarding process, and this is another big deal considering some of the kind of clientele we appeal to, which is usually the 50, 55 plus with a median age range in the kind of early 60s, basically. You can board direct off the ship, off one of the main decks, so there's no steps or ladders to contend with. And then you'll see on the bottom right hand side, the hydraulic system just lowers us gently into the water, and then away we go. And that's exactly the same, but in reverse when we come back to the ship after our twice daily excursions. We just drive onto the platform, brings us up, and we step off and onto the ship. It's completely unique to Coral Expeditions. It allows us to really provide that true expedition experience. And again, whether or not you're 21 or 81 for that matter, they provide a beautiful way of exploring these really kind of remote wilderness destinations. That being said, on all of our trips, not just in the Kimberley, we complement those explorer tenders with the more traditional Zodiac inflatables. And it means that you guys, as our guests, can, pick and choose how adventurous or not that you want to be on a day-by-day basis. On the trip that I just returned from recently, we use Zodiacs on multiple occasions through the trip. If you want to stay on the nice, comfy Explorers, absolutely not a problem. But if you want to get that bit closer to nature and some of the crocodiles that we saw out there, absolutely encourage you to jump onto the Zodiacs and have, that real kind of traditional expedition experience. So the onboard experience at Coral Expeditions is the complete other end of the scale from that kind of classic big ship experience, which some of you joining us today might have experienced. We don't have multiple bars, restaurants, casinos, nightclubs, white jacketed waiters, big, beautiful chandeliers. It's just not that type of experience. The only kind of onboard entertainment is our full schedule of lectures and presentations from our onboard expedition crew, but also our guest lecturers that we get on board to provide that real kind of in-depth, detailed knowledge, be it on the history, geologies, cultures, flora, fauna, indigenous rock art in the Kimberley, and they're obviously selected based on those kind of specific itineraries and true experts in their field. The aim being that we can kind of really kind of immerse you and educate you, prior to arriving at a particular, indigenous rock art site or impressive bit of geology, or before going to, Monty Reef, a bit of a presentation on the marine life and bird life that we might well see there. And as mentioned, on all of our shore excursions twice a day, you're led by our onboard team. Ian Morris, that you can see on the screen there, for any of you who have cruised with Coral in the Kimberley or Cape York and Arnhem Land previously, going to be more than aware of him. I've got a nice little video coming up shortly with him and his adopted Indigenous son, who's also part of our onboard kind of crew, particularly in the Kimberley. And he's an absolute Coral legend, been with us 25 plus years. And he's the kind of perfect embodiment of our type of expedition leader team that we get on board. So I've just got a short little video for you here. Ian Morris in the previous slide, one of our most experienced expedition team. This is his kind of story, but focusing on his adopted son Goimer, and it gives you a real good overview of kind of what to expect in that kind of onboard experience.
You come back on board, and if you didn't have a talk beforehand, it's explained to you. That's been amazing. And to have a guest lecturer, an Indigenous guest lecturer, is wonderful.
If you find a paperbark tree, it stores a lot of water, fresh water.
Goimer's been wonderful with all his knowledge.
So for us, it's about interpreting, through storytelling and demonstrations and workshops and just getting the full experience.
One of the other amazing things about having Goimer on board is that he'll pick up some sticks and leaves and make it into a traditional medicine.
When you're feeling sick, very sick, this is what we used to do. Stringy bark. This thing is very powerful, bush medicine. Cutting it. So once the Micassins came from Indonesia, they brought this yiki. We call this yiki knife. Not only knife, tobacco, and many other things. So they were like our guys from Bunnings.
He's got such a wonderful personality. He's great.
Sitting through some of their onboard presentations, you're so much more attuned the next day when you go into a region, and it just really adds to the experience when you're out on an excursion.
So I worked with the Coral Expedition through adopted father of mine, whose name is Ian Morris. Ian kind of became adopted by my grandparents, and my grandfather was Ian's mentor.
In order to learn Indigenous science up there, I had to be good at language. I began learning the Indigenous languages very young. Then the old men could talk to you and tell you all the fine details. They didn't know how to say it in English. And that's what happened in Australia. English dominated, and it meant that Indigenous people weren't able to express all the fine details that they had. And it's very sad because the price we had to pay for that sort of linguistic ignorance was we lost all the knowledge that they had accumulated over 65,000 years of managing this land. It was the key to the whole environment. And it sort of stopped with language. So I was really keen to learn that stuff, their language and their science. And I was in heaven.
So that's how I got to know Ian, and that's how I got to learn from him as well.
Look, it's a beautiful story, and if you guys choose to cruise with us in the Kimberley this season or beyond, it's you're going to be lucky to have either Ian or Goimer as one of our kind of expedition team and guest lecturer team on board. But moving on to the specific Kimberley cruises. Our classic offering is the Kimberley cruise. It's 10 nights between Darwin and Broome and vice versa, departing April to September every year for the last 31 years. I did Darwin to Broome, but the itinerary is absolutely identical, just obviously in reverse there. And I often get asked, what's the best side, port or starboard? It's it's irrelevant actually for this particular trip. What really surprised me in the Kimberley is the dramatic kind of rugged coastline. There's hundreds, if not thousands, of islands, creeks, river systems there, and the ship is permanently changing direction throughout the trip. So it really doesn't matter which side of the ship you're on. For those kind of 5 or 6 months of the Kimberley season, all 3 of our ships are present there, and we offer 40 to 45 departures each and every year. But we do have 2 other itineraries. The Best of the Kimberley and the Tiwi Islands. This again is 10 nights between Darwin and Broome, departing August and September each year. And we use Coral Discoverer, our smallest vessel. So you still get all the major highlights of the Kimberley, as you can see from the map there. But we tack on a couple of nights or include a couple of nights in the stunning Tiwi Islands. This is a particular kind of Indigenous art centre. It's a perfect place if you have that kind of specific interest, or a perfect opportunity to buy some Indigenous art direct from the artists themselves. And then we have what we call our Kimberley icons, Ashmore and the Rowley Shoals. It's 12 nights between Darwin and Broome again, departs in September each year aboard Coral Geographer and Adventurer. And again, this is a perfect trip for those wanting to venture that bit deeper out into international waters to Scott and Ashmore Reef. A perfect place to do some scuba diving if you're so inclined. And we include that extra 2 nights because it takes the best part of half a day to get back out to Scotty and Ashmore Reef and then return as well. So it's a beautiful little itinerary, particularly if you want to get in and under the water out on those reefs. Because absolutely getting in the water on our more kind of classic 10-night Kimberley expeditions is not advised due to the obviously ever-present threat of saltwater crocs. So just on to some of the amazing highlights of the classic 10-night trip. King George Falls, if you're departing from Darwin, this is going to be your first and one of the favourites of the trip. It's a spectacular twin falls. I was there, like I say, a couple of weeks or so ago. The waterfalls are absolutely pumping. So April, May and June, we kind of call the waterfall season. And it's when, if you want to see these in full flow, that's absolutely when you should be booking your trip. Towards the end of the season, the flows tend to be restricted. Some of the waterfalls we see might dry up, but it's still, an absolutely spectacular experience as we cruise through the canyon to get to these falls, which is a 25-minute cruise or so. We then transfer into the Zodiacs if you prefer, and we can nudge up really close to the falls and have our first what we call Kimberley shower. Vansittart Bay. It's the first of our rock art sites, basically. And as you can see from one of the images there, it's spectacularly beautiful. It's not a long walk up to the kind of rock systems where these beautiful paintings are displayed. So that's our kind of morning activity. And then in the afternoon, we head off to another beautiful, stunning kind of beach and cave where we've got a short walk to the old C380, I believe, not C380, C130. And it's the wreck of a World War II McDonnell Douglas, I believe. And again, our guest lecturers give you the full story and context behind that. But it's a beautiful day. The Mitchell Falls heli flight. This is the one activity in our classic Kimberley 10-night expedition that isn't included in the fare. I got the opportunity to do this again very recently, and I can assure you it's worth every single penny. You're picked up off an absolutely stunning beach, basically, and then you get approximately a 20-25 minute scenic flight right up onto the high Kimberley Plateau, and we land at Mitchell Falls, where you've got the excuse me, the opportunity to have a dip in the creek, crop free, we promise you. And then you get about a 45-minute to an hour wander around there. We have a packed lunch, depending on the time of day you go. And then you get another 25-minute flight back to that same beach. Beautiful experience. You can book this direct on board. You don't have to kind of pre-plan it, and payable on board at the end of your trip. Highly recommended. Porossus Creek. Again, another beautiful activity. This is very tidal dependent, as is everywhere in the Kimberley. But again, we board both our Explorer tenders and with the option of jumping on board one of our Zodiacs. And we literally spend a few hours cruising through the myriad of kind of creeks and wider river systems of Porossus Creek. A great place to spot crocodiles and bird life and turtles if you're lucky. A beautiful little morning excursion into Porossus Creek. King's Cascade, what can I say? An absolutely stunning experience. This is a spring-fed kind of creek river system, so it's always flowing no matter the time of year. We pull our explorers, as you can see from the image there, we can pull up to the waterfall, and we drop our ramp basically at the front and give you another opportunity to have what we call a Kimberley shower. So we can stand on the front. You've got this beautiful, cool, fresh water cascading down onto you. A beautiful experience. And it must be said, many other operators in the Kimberley don't offer King's Cascade. It's about a 30 to 40 minute, pretty high speed cruise on our Explorer tenders to even get to these falls. Because we have those Explorer tenders, we can offer it. But many people who are relying just on those Zodiacs, it's just too far to get to on those, traditional Zodiac inflatables. But a beautiful experience. And then we have a lovely kind of cruise through the wider area, seeing what wildlife we can find. Careening Bay. The kind of early European kind of explorer, Philip Parker King, is very well known in these parts. He's named a lot of the areas. This is the famous kind of mermaid tree that he kind of carved his ship's name and date into, I think in 1820. Again, our guest lecturers and expedition team provide a much wider kind of context to the area. But it's a beautiful opportunity to get off the ship and have a little walk in, again, what is a beautifully stunning part of the Kimberley. And then Monty Reef or Montgomery Reef, to give it its full name. This is going to be one of the highlights of your trip. Montgomery Reef is just off the mainland coast. It's about 400 square kilometres that at high tide doesn't exist. You can see in the background of this photo where we kind of moor the ship. We jump onto the Explorer tenders again, and we cruise down this main channel. Again, we give you the option to jump onto those Zodiac inflatables, and then we just, cruise through the little niches and creeks that are found when the tide drops, and we can have up to 12-meter tides here. The water just cascades off this reef. At low tide, it's about 400 square kilometres. Hundreds of sea turtles. The bird life is particularly good there as well. And it's going to be a real highlight of your trip. And then Horizontal Falls. What can I say? It's probably the one big highlight of the Kimberley that most people have, already are aware of, and it really doesn't disappoint. We'll wake up there in Port Talbot Bay one morning, spectacular scenery, and we were moored, just literally a few hundred meters from what you can see on the screen there. We then jump into our Zodiac inflatables for this trip. And you have the option of heading through the falls, at a particularly time of the day where, it's really pumping. It's an exhilarating experience. It's a very, very safe experience. We do take you to the second of the two falls that are in Port Talbot, but the second one, we very much just take you for a bit of a close-up look. We don't go through, or no commercial operator goes through it, and you'll see the reason why when you see it kind of pumping through the real narrow gap. But the wider gap that you can see on the screen here, you get a number of times to go through it as required. It's a beautiful experience and will be one of the real highlights that you'll take from our kind of Kimberley expeditions. Nares Point, one of the truly amazing takeaways from the Kimberley is just the absolutely stunning landscapes and geology. that is just seems to get better and better on a daily basis when you go through the Kimberley. You're going to be waking up in a spectacular new bay or river system each and every morning, basically, before the ship then usually relocates for a couple of hours whilst we have our lunch on board to provide that varied, second daily excursion or shore excursion. Nair's Point, I put this slide in just because it's just represents some of the iconic geology of the area, but it will be your one big takeaway from the Kimberley, just these spectacular remote wilderness landscapes. And then the last kind of major highlight of my particular cruise to Darwin and then arriving into Broome is the Lacepede Islands. These are really kind of low, not particularly geologically exciting islands, but it was a massive highlight. We arrived there, early in the morning, and it's a massive marine breeding colony. Frigate birds, pelicans, the different types of boobies, some gulls. It was spectacular. They're just starting their breeding season now, so we're just starting to see some of the chicks appear. And then in the water, in the space of a couple of hours, I saw 2 or 3 sharks, literally hundreds of green turtles, and yeah, it was a spectacular experience and a really amazing way to finish my particular trip. And like I say, if you're arriving into Broome the next morning, it's an absolutely perfect destination to finish your trip. So just to give you a bit of a wider overview of potential wildlife encounters and seasons, basically. So I touched on earlier, April, May and June, we consider what we call the waterfall season. If you're looking to see the multitude of waterfalls in peak flow, head into the Kimberley as soon as you can in the season and you won't be disappointed. The landscapes also happen to be at their kind of most lush and green, or at least as lush and green as the Kimberley's ever going to get. Towards the end of the season, so July, August, September, the landscapes tend to have been kind of burnt that beautiful red kind of ochre crispness, but the whales have arrived as well, so you get a very kind of varied experience, but that's still that same stunning remote landscapes at any time of year. So I've just got one final little video to play you before we kind of come to the end of our presentation, so enjoy and I'll chat to you in a second.
Coral Expeditions are the pioneers of Kimberley cruising. With over 30 years' experience, our local knowledge is unrivaled. Our small ships are designed to explore and connect, with fewer guests and more time ashore. Our local crew guide the way with Australian hospitality and pride. Join us on a classic Australian adventure. Cruise with the pioneers. Coral Expeditions.
So thank you very much for joining me today, guys. I just wanted to provide that kind of brief overview of kind of what to expect in the Kimberley and to kind of highlight some of our kind of key points of difference. Just to reiterate, we've been cruising the waters of the Kimberley for 31 seasons now. We've got more departures than anyone else between Darwin and Broome each and every year. The Kimberley is subject to some of the second highest tidal ranges on the planet, and that local knowledge and experience that we've accrued over the years is absolutely crucial in providing that true kind of expedition experience in the Kimberley. You turn up at Montgomery Reef at the wrong time of the tidal day, it just doesn't exist. It's completely underwater. You turn up at Horizontal Falls at the wrong time of day, you don't get that beautiful raging torrent of water. And that's the same in pretty much all of our daily activities and excursions throughout the day. It's absolutely dictated by the tides. No one expedition is truly identical to the other. But if you're choosing to, or you've booked with Coral Expeditions for this season or beyond, you're going to have an absolutely fantastic time. If you're just joining us today to kind of consider your options, look, take it from me, who's just returned a couple of weeks ago. It's an absolutely stunning part of the world. It's one of the most remaining untouched places on the planet, I would say. and the wildlife, the marine life, the flora, the fauna, the geology and the landscapes, and obviously the ancient indigenous kind of histories there are absolutely mind-blowing. So please reach out to us, and we'd love to see you on board. If you've got any questions, you can jump onto you can pick up the phone to our genuinely excellent res and service team based at our Cairns head office. You can contact us on the email there on the screen, or please reach out to your friendly travel advisors, travel agents, if you have one. We've been working with the trade for, again, pretty much all of our 40 years, so we would love to hear from them as well. Whilst the presentation's been going on, I have had a couple of questions pop through. So a couple of you actually have asked about kind of physical abilities. How strenuous are those, particular shore excursions? Look, in the Kimberley, I would say absolutely, we don't offer any kind of strenuous hikes. That's just not what the Kimberley is all about. I touched on earlier as well that our kind of key demographic is that kind of 50, 55 plus with a median age in the early 60s. So we very much cater accordingly. On my recent trip, we had people in their late 30s up to their late 80s, and it was amazing to see how well looked after some of the more kind of older and more physically unable guests. They didn't miss out on any of our shore excursions or activities. If they didn't want to go on one of our walks, we just kept them in our Explorer tenders, and the crew took them for a little private cruise through the creeks and river systems. So it was beautiful to see, but we cater accordingly, and we offer different options, and again, catering to our particular demographics. Is there any rough water ocean? So I can never say no, because we're out on the open sea, basically. But the Kimberley is heavily protected. Like I said, there's thousands of islands and rocky outcrops and peninsulas. And the captain, again, using our experience over the last 30 years, is able to find, beaches and mooring spots that are completely sheltered. And so we had, an absolutely drama-free cruise through the Kimberley on my recent trip. So particularly in the Kimberley, absolutely, you don't have to worry about those inclement weather. We're always going to have a plan in place so it doesn't affect that kind of crucial expedition and shore excursion experience. Again, a couple of you have mentioned swimming opportunities. Are there any? So look, with the exception of our 12-night itinerary out to Scotty or Ashmore Reefs, the Kimberley really isn't about getting in or under the water, and that's in vast part due to the ever-present risk of saltwater crocs. I personally saw, I think, 5 or 6 crocodiles throughout the 10-day trip I was recently on. There are far more than that in the Kimberley, and obviously you've got your marine stingers. So it's not about focusing on that or getting into the water. It's actively discouraged for obvious reasons. That being said, there are a couple of opportunities. So if you do the Mitchell Falls helicopter flight, you get a beautiful hour or so to spend right up on the plateau near Mitchell Falls, the waterfalls themselves, and you've got a chance to jump into the water. And then again, depending on the specifics of the itinerary and the time of day, there might be a couple more opportunities to jump into the creeks that are guaranteed to be croc-free. But in short, if you're if you're a water baby, we have amazing itineraries around Australia and into the international waters where you're getting kind of in and under the water on practically a day-by-day basis. Wi-Fi. I often get Wi-Fi questions. It's important to kind of keep in contact with friends and family whilst you're out there, and we actively encourage you to do so and post those beautiful photos and videos. So we spent a large amount of money, not that Elon Musk needs it, recently installing Starlink Wi-Fi capabilities across all 3 ships in the Coral Fleet. We provide, included in your fare, our standard Wi-Fi. That's usually good enough for that kind of basic checking social medias, reading the news, posting some photos, that type of thing. If you are unlucky enough to have some important work meetings or God forbid have the time to want to download Netflix movies, we would recommend you upgrade to our premium Wi-Fi service that does come at an additional cost. But that being said, that the Wi-Fi, having experienced it, is pretty much as good as our kind of head office based up in Cairns. So that is pretty much, I think, all of the questions that have come through today. I'm sorry I've taken up a little bit more time than I anticipated. Just aiming to provide that kind of overview of who we are and what we do in the Kimberley. No one has the levels of experience and expertise that we've offer. So if you are looking to head into the Kimberley, please, give us a call or get your travel agent to give us a call, and we'll happily see you on board. And if you are one of those guests who are just getting a bit of pre-trip information because you've already booked, you're going to have a genuinely amazing time in the Kimberley. It's a spectacular part of the world, and you've chosen, I might be a little bit biased, but you've chosen by far and away the best company to experience it with. So thank you very much for your time today. Really appreciate that. And we look forward to seeing you on board soon. Thanks very much, guys.